Good morning. As Joshi said, thanks for coming. I know some of you are here with a hangover. I hope you're here with a hangover. I'm always happy to give a talk, a ramble. That's what I do. Forgive me if you've heard me speak before. I'm not going to pull anything new out of my ass. I'm just saying what I believe. I really am passionate about what I do, but I don't pretend to have all the answers. You know, what I believe in and what we're trying to do at Droga 5 and what I've tried to do previously is sort of relevant to me, and hopefully some of those principles may resonate with you and maybe not. But I thought today, instead of just giving you a spiel about what we're doing today and all that sort of stuff, it's Throwback Thursday. And as you heard, in 2006, that's when I founded Droga 5. And last week was actually our 10th anniversary, which was kind of a big deal for me because it threw me about how fast it's gone, 10 years, and how much I've aged, which is scary. And last week we celebrated by going out to Queens to spend a whole day building a park for people less fortunate than everyone in this room. And it kind of struck me as I was sitting there, which is an amazing thing to do. And there's now, it's actually now about 650, 700 people at Droga 5 in New York, which is shocking that we have that many people. That a lot of those people don't really know they know who we are and they're proud to work with Droga 5 and they contribute a lot to Droga 5. But the day after that, I actually went into the office and I do a weekly creative department meeting. And normally we just catch up on things. And I just wanted to talk to the creative department about who we were and what we were when we started. And a lot of people always ask me, like, what does Droga 5 stand for and what are your secrets and all that, secret sources? And we don't really have any, to be honest. There is no secret sauce. There is no proprietary ways of doing things. There's just a certain intention, good intentions that we have and just a manner in which we strive for that actually isn't new. It can't be trademarked. It's basically something that started when we started with just two people. And so today I actually want to talk to you a little bit about what the hell I was trying to do when I started Droga 5. And I'm going to talk to you about the first 4 things we did at Droga 5. They may be dated, doesn't matter. It's more about the intentions and how and why we did, and how actually those 4 things kind of informed what we're trying to do today. And I'm not trying to have a rear vision mirror and say I want to reinvent going back to where we were, but everything that we tried to do back in the day, I'm trying to still keep the purity and the good intentions and the ambition and the audacity and the pureness of then, now. And so that's really what we're about. And to go back a little bit further, when I started Droga 5, I'm not going to bullshit, I didn't start with a business plan or any of that sort of stuff, though. I didn't have some sort of epiphany where I'm like, you know what, I've got this great idea, I'm going to try and revolutionize advertising. I just wanted to I'm a creative person, and I just wanted to do work that I really believe in and work that I feel has major impact. And that major impact can be at a societal level, it can be at a pop culture level. I was just tired of being in a position where I would sit in a room and talk about what I stood for and the principles of it and not act on that. And if everybody that talked about what they believe in speeches and boardrooms actually acted on that, it would be a very different industry than we are today. A lot of people have very strong points of view, very few people act on them. So people think that the very first thing that we did 10 years ago was for Mark Echo. It actually wasn't. The very first thing, I had that classic moment when I was leaving my job, and I had one of those ridiculous jobs you think you want. I was worldwide chief creative officer of the Publicis network, had the corner office, the title, all that sort of stuff you think you want. And I didn't want it. That's not about them, that's about me. I sort of got giddy and excited about, all right, I'm going to quit this job that no one else would have the chutzpah to quit and see if I can start something on my own. So I did that, said to my secretary, Mindy Liu, who was fantastic, crazy Chinese-American woman, head-to-toe tattoos. I'm like, I'm going to quit. I'm going to start an agency. Do you want to come with me? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. So I had that classic moment where I was leaving the office with a box of stuff, And GE client was in the building, and the GE client said to me, David, can I talk to you for 2 minutes? I said, yeah, sure. And they said, we want to be your first client. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's amazing. That sounds amazing. I still knew nothing about like what that actually means, because I'd never, I'd lived in this creative bubble for first 15 years of my life. I'd always been the creative guy. I never had to understand what it meant to be contracts or anything beyond that. But I was like, definitely I want GE to be my first client. At the same time, I just moved into a new house in East Village, and I just had my second child. So that my life was chaotic. There's reason for these stories, by the way. I'm not just giving a... So I remember having to go to an internet cafe to try and work out a contract to send with one of those internet things that you send by the dollar, or whatever it is. To send it, I'm making up numbers, like, how much do you charge for a thing? I didn't know. What's a number that sounds good? I can't remember what the number is. And I sent it to them. And the brief that they sent me, or what they wanted me to do was... it was coming up to the Beijing Olympics, and they said, like, what can we do? Obviously they're one of the biggest sponsors of the Olympics, like McDonald's and Coke and all that. We want your thinking on what we should do. And I was like, okay, this is going to be great. I was working in a production company this day, borrowed a desk from a production company. And it just struck me, which is my thinking then and what we try and do today, beyond me and our agency, is not what we should do. What's the right thing to do? If all things considered, what would be the right thing for this brand to do, even if we don't know how to do it? And it could be traditional, it could be new, it could be something invented, but what is the right thing to do, and what do I want the outcome to be? Not what do I want my peers to think about it, not do I want the press release to be, like what the fuck do I want the people we're talking to think about? And the more that GE spoke to me about what they were doing, I was like, GE is an incredible company. And normally what happens with these sort of big corporations is they spend, $50 million, $100 million putting TV commercials with athletes and saying, proud sponsor of blah, 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 or they billboards of athletes doing dramatic leaps and bounds and all that sort of stuff, and they logos. And I thought, let the other cliche brands do that. I had nothing to lose. Again, that's the privilege of having huge amount of arrogance and huge amount of naivety and huge amount of audacity, and nothing to lose, because all I could lose was a desk that I'd borrowed, was I'm going to present them what I really think is the right answer. And I thought, they're an amazing company. They have amazing technology. Instead of going into Beijing with billboards and TV commercials, why don't you go and take all your technology that you have, which is proprietary to you, which is from solar panels to also the technology to clean water, purify water. I said, why don't you build a building in the Olympic Village that stays for the next 50, 100 years and make it out of all your technology, and it purifies the river that runs through Beijing for the same price. Again, it's outrageous. What do I know about architecture and all that sort of stuff? And again, I thought, so I present this idea, and I call up this guy called Bill McDermott, who's a guy who is at the forefront of green technology, and tell him about this. Somehow get a call through to Philippe Starck and say, do you want to design a building with me? He says yes. Again, I'm calling from a borrowed phone, right? And I go to GE and say, let me see if I can screw this up. Can we build a building, and that's your advertising campaign, that you can house all your exhibitions in there, and meanwhile, while everyone else is doing disposable stuff, your greatest advertisement is a building that'll stand the test of time. So when they pack up the tents and the Olympics are gone, your thing stands. And GE were like, we love it. Why don't we explore doing this? So I end up finding myself on a plane to Beijing to have to present. Again, context. This agency is Droga 5's business card still has my address on it at home, right? There's 3 of us, 4 of us now, 3 or 4 of us in the agency. But the idea, which doesn't mean, an idea can take any shape and form. But the thing in my head was thinking, this is such an outrageous idea, but in my mind, it was the right idea. The same costs, if they could go there. So we end up presenting to the Beijing committee. We've got GE trying to actually explore this, Judy Hu and Beth Comstock into it. And we're actually going through logistics of finding out, can we build a building that's going to last? Now, clearly, as we know the end of the story, it didn't happen. For logistics reasons, for I think it was going to cost $80, $90 million. There was permits. You couldn't build it in the Olympic Village. Right from the beginning, it set in motion in my head was like, wow, great ideas, communication ideas can manifest themselves in any way. And to be able to sit down and legitimately convince a really smart client like G to even consider it, and to have a partner like Philippe Starck, Madman, to want to do it with us because he saw the potential of the idea. Suddenly made, again, it sort of reaffirmed everything I believed when I wanted to set up the agency. Is like, great ideas are more important than scale, boardrooms, pins in a map, anything. Like, if you've got the right idea and a great strategy. And I thought, okay, from now on, I'm only going to ever try and do, which is what I wanted to do. And that was, it's funny because that's been in our office, this picture. And I actually talked to the creative department last week, and I said, who knows about the GE building? And we've got maybe 160 creatives now, and only like 2 people put their hand up. I was like, shit, we need to know about it, what I was trying, or what we were trying. So then we jump cut from that. Thank heavens, and again, I didn't have a businessman at this stage. GE paid me enough that I could, sustain my small little business. And within about 2 days after the Beijing meeting, I come back and I get a call from some guy called Mark Echo. And he says, I want you to do something to get to my sort of target market. I've got to get, build our brand even more and more. And I knew nothing about him, and I did a lot of research. Again, that's what you got to do. It wasn't just about, and it turns out this guy is an ex-graffiti artist, and he had this big brand, and he started, he was probably 30, maybe. He's probably been younger than that. 30, very successful, billion-dollar brands. And he started as a graffiti artist. And people were buying his stuff because of the street cred, not because of, the quality of stitching. No offense to his stitching. And I just thought, shit, okay, what's the right thing to do for him? And again, this is the point I'm trying to make. I'm not trying to say that what I did for GE is right for any other brand, or what I did for Echo is right for other brand. But the starting point was, okay, what would we do in an ideal world? Not just what's the right messaging, who are we talking to, what's the right message? The context of, obviously the content is the most important. That's the storytelling, whatever you want to call it. The canvas is where's it go, and the context is like, what's the environment out there at the moment? And it just struck me that we have to be a bit subversive, and anyone that's going to give street cred to him doesn't want to be patronized with sort of ads. So let's do something that is honourable to graffiti. So I read this book about graffiti, knowing nothing about it, and suddenly became a quick study in it, and worked out that in graffiti culture, the most important thing for credibility is like, it's called a heavenly sight, where you put the graffiti. I'm not talking shitty graffiti on a car. It's like, if you see beautiful graffiti on a bridge or something like that, under a bridge that's hard to get to, there's a certain respect there. So I wrote this script, and which was, again, I wasn't surrounded, this is the point I want to make, I wasn't surrounded by a lot of very smart, responsible people with good intentions who had legitimate reasons to stop me presenting it, okay? Most agencies have lots and lots of smart, very respectable people with good intentions that have legitimate reasons why you shouldn't do something. They're paid to do that. They're paid to be responsible. They're paid to give you the counter to that. I didn't have that. I was like, this is what I really believe. I really believe if he wants to get to his audience, we need to create something subversive that's against the man. So I wrote this script about people breaking into Andrews Air Force Base. Same thing. Had no idea if he'd buy it. Had no idea if he did buy it, what the hell we'd do. And again, this is the thing about, so I walk into this meeting, present to him, in this huge boardroom. I've just got this script, I'm like, okay, I know you're expecting TV and print, but I'm going to read you this script. I think we should do it, and I want to release it through news agencies in Germany and Brazil. And it talks about these people breaking into Andrews Air Force Base. And the first thing he says, which is, you're always nervous a client's reaction is going to be, that's ridiculous, I wanted it. He's like, can one of these kids die? I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean, can one of them die? He goes, can one of them get shot? I'm like, fucking hell. That's more outrageous than I'm thinking. I said, but actually no, because that would change the whole tenor of the spot. It would change it into it's not going to get on the news media because it would be about a kid getting killed. I can't justify that one. I'm going to show you. I've just done like 30-second clips of this.
Number 1
on NBC5, ABC 13 News.
Mark Echo.
Graffiti artist pulled off an internet hoax that even got the attention of the White House.
Eyewitness News.
This comes just now from WNBC.
Someone spraying graffiti on President Bush's jet.
On the president's plane.
What were these guys doing to Air Force One?
Organized by designer and entrepreneur Mark Echo.
Graffiti.
We also talked to the Pentagon about the video today.
And it looked so authentic. In fact, the Air Force actually checked to see whether the plane had been vandalized.
Anyway, so the thing about that is, again, I want to just context that still now we're about 6 people. And we had to rent a 747. Yeah, sorry. We had to rent a 747. How the fuck do you rent a 747? Anonymously, okay? So we had a producer, we're ringing around. First 747 we want to hire. Turns out some guy in Mexico wants us to, he'll rent it to us, but he wants, and we obviously only needed to paint one side of the plane. He wanted us to paint both sides of the plane. We're like, that's a bit dodgy. That's very dodgy. The next one we find is in Arizona. Turns out, this is again when you're faxing things. It's only 10 years ago, it's crazy. Turns out it's owned by the CIA. We had to back out of that one because we're trying to keep everything quiet. And meanwhile, lawyers are telling us, well, you realize you're potentially breaking the Patriot Act here. Because if you do something that causes a stir where the president's plane has to be diverted because they think it's been tampered with, you're breaking the Patriot Act, you're going to go to jail. Again, Aussie guy, 6 people. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? You know, it'll be a short-lived agency. They won't really do that. So in our office, but I did at one point think we had all these shooting boards in the office as we work out how to do this, and there were literally camera angles going, shoot from here, aiming at the president's plane. We're having to work out how to run and gun it. Even though we reenacted everything, we had to map where everything was for the plane. The opening shot, we literally had to drive past Andrews Air Force Base with our cameras out of the car, racing past. Meanwhile, all these armed guards are watching this car going past with filming. The stupidity of creative people, right? But again, the audacity. But even more importantly, like, we believed it was the right thing to do for his audience. And I knew we'd hit pay dirt when we leaked it out. And this is, just at the infant stage of YouTube and all that sort of stuff, Twitter and all that happenings. And people were calling me going, have you seen this video? Have you seen this video? Someone broke in Andrews Air Force Base. And I was like, okay, it's a good one. But the funny thing about that was, which was fantastic for him and Echo's brand, people immediately assume with all agencies that, oh my God, okay, I get what you're about. You guys are the viral agency. You're the hoax agency. Everyone wants to pigeonhole you. I'm like, no, I don't want to be that. I just want to be a smart agency. I don't need us to prove how creative we are to anyone. I know we're creative, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, I want to have creativity that is aimed at something and has a real strategy and purpose in it. And I think the strategy and purpose, we're celebrated as a creative agency, but if you scratch the surface of everything, there's a very obvious strategy baked in there that gives us so much freedom and runway, no pun intended, to do things, to do outrageous things, to do ambitious things. And I'm not saying everything has to be a stretch or an outrageous, by no means. Not everything has to be a building or has to be, planes and stuff like that. Sometimes it's the most traditional thing. Sometimes it's the most obvious thing. So then we did that. And again, there was a sort of a fantastic momentum in the office and excitement. But, you get paranoid about, okay, well, what do we do next? And the next thing that we did, this was sort of a flurry, actually. We've grown to about 8 people, and even though at the time I think I was bullshitting clients, we were 20 people, but there was about 8 of us. We finally moved to our first office space where we rented, and it was in Broadway. And the TAP project, which was for UNICEF, came along. And that one, actually, to me, to this day, is still one of my favorite things, just because I don't know, it's just like a beautiful, it just proves a beautiful idea you can do, the ramifications of a beautiful idea. And it's raised, over $10 million for children in need. And just, again, it's the audacity of a really simple idea, obvious idea. And again, the thought was, how do you raise money for children around the world who don't have access to clean water? Huge issue. Instead of just doing ads that showed children dying of thirst, or in Africa, we thought, the contradiction between what's going on these parts of the world and the world we all live in, where we have access to clean water, it's crazy. You know, clean water we take for granted so much, and it's a weird thing. Whereas if someone stopped you in the street, I remember I thought this actually in a diner. And I was sitting there because someone put a glass of water in front of me, as you do, right? You know, as soon as your ass hits a seat in a diner or a restaurant here, someone fills your glass with tap water. And it just struck me. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, the most important thing in life is in front of you, and in environments for us, and we take it for granted. And it's a weird thing. It's also about context. Like, if I was walking down the street and someone tries to stop you to talk to you about an important issue like water, or wants to get $1 from your pocket, you know, it's sort of awkward. You feel bad and you rush. But then in an environment where you're conducive to paying money, like at restaurants, so we just had this very simple thought, like, why don't we package something, just brand something that already exists? Why don't we actually create a brand for tap water? We don't have to ship it, we don't have to bottle it, we don't have to do anything, but you just have restaurants want to charge you $1 for tap water. So that's how the TAP project started, but I'll just...
$1 would buy you 40 liters of water. A child needs between 1 and 2 liters a day to survive, so either 40 children will live one more day from that dollar, or one child will live 40 more days from that dollar.
Eyewitness News. This is Today.
Anyway, you get it, blah, blah. The thing about it is, it really put in perspective for me about agencies have a responsibility. Like, you can do stuff that is bigger than yourself. You can do stuff. Like, we're creative people, and creative people can actually find new avenues and fresh avenues. And you see that now more and more and more. There's so many great ideas that come out of our industry, and that's the beauty of our industry now, is it's irrelevant of the size of the agency or the size of the country or the size of the budget, where some of the biggest ideas sort of bubble up now. And it's incredible. And you see that they sort of, our responsibility is more than just selling stuff. You know, our responsibility is to contribute something positive. And that's something that runs through very much at Droga 5. You know, I'm proud that we sell sneakers and beer and insurance, but I'm also very, very proud that we also work on things that have a social contribution. And I think that that's as much about who we are as that is our culture, even more so than the creativity. And again, the TAP project was just a simple one. To get that going, we had that thought, let's just create a logo. And then from there, the asks become easier. We just, you know, as simple as we started knocking on doors, going around, getting restaurants, celebrity chefs to want to be part of this. And it just created this momentum where people want to get involved in things. And just, we wanted to say to the client, advertising communication doesn't have to, again, manifest itself in print or television or radio, unless it does. I mean, you can, but it doesn't always have to be that way. Sometimes it can just be a thought or a different lateral way of doing things. And again, that sort of was so all this was happening in this agency as we're taking form, and we weren't, you know, obviously this thing is about disruption and reinvention. We're not sitting there thinking, let's be disruptive or reinvent anything. You know what I mean? That's not what we're thinking. We're just thinking, let's do stuff that we honestly think is the right thing to do, and let's do stuff that we think is going to stand out. And even to this day, like, when we present work and when I approve work or we present work, or like, we think about the consumers or the target audience's reaction as part of the narrative. Like, what do we want that actually to be? Instead of just creating something beautiful, like, instead of just putting out there, what's people's reaction? You know, I don't want to do stuff just for YouTube or for award show juries or stuff. Like, I keep on thinking, like, what is the action that's going to come from that? And that doesn't mean everything has to be heady or worthy. Sometimes being irreverent and entertaining is the best thing you can do and the right thing to do. But what keeps us, and I think one of the things that keeps us future-facing or trying to be future-facing, is the variety and the lack of being confined in a box. Every agency, people try and confine you in, like, they're the anthem agency, they're the comedy agency, they're the, you know, the digital agency, they're the, you know, no, I mean, we're all creative people, we're all strategic people. Just be the smart agency, and that gives you so many sandboxes to play in and canvases to play in. And that, for us, is what I like. And, you know, the thing when I was giving this sort of recap to my creative department, I was sort of talking again, because I want us to remember that audacity. Because now that we, as I said, with the scale we have, we are incredibly responsible. We want to be responsible. We have to be responsible. But within that, sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is to have that audacity still baked in. Because just trying to play in between the lines isn't necessarily responsible. You know what I mean? That's just average. Which moves me to something that was probably too irresponsible, but I'll bring it up anyway because it was our fourth thing. And to sell that, this is one of my, back in the day, this is actually one of my favorite things we did that never really took off, but I loved it so much. And it was, and the thought in this one was a small New Zealand beer called Steinlager that wanted to launch in America. And I basically had to insult the clients to sell this idea. Are there any Kiwis in the room? Of course there's not. It's such a pissant country, right? No, I'm joking. I'm Australian, we have to say that. But the thing is, what they were doing, so the client came to see us in our little tiny office in Broadway. We didn't even have a boardroom. We didn't have walls anywhere. It was just like the little table in the middle of it. And they're like, we're going to move here, and Nick, the CMO, is going to move to New York to launch Steinlager, da-da-da. And what started as a joke, when we're thinking about this, we're like, okay, people don't really know anything about New Zealand apart from Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, but how can we make a virtue of this country that's in the middle of nowhere? And so we thought, well, isn't it funny that being such a small country, this is when we had to present, I said, you're such a small country, can you afford for Nick to leave your country? Isn't it a brain drain to have someone leave your country and move to New York? Like, really, isn't that too much of a tax on the... They're like, what? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, how many people do you have that are educated and, qualified and working professionals? This meeting was to take a bad turn. And then they realised I'm joking. I'm saying, so why don't we do it? We create a competition where literally someone can win Nick's life in New Zealand. So basically we create this whole campaign where you win his job at Steinlager, you win his girlfriend, his parents, his friends, his house, everything. So we created this thing called Win Nick's Life. And we went down and shot so many films. And actually, they all wanted to do a TV show about it in New Zealand, because it became it became cultish, actually, more in New Zealand than here. One of my favorite things. But we sort of screwed up how we got it out there, but...
Hi, I'm Emma. The whole town hasn't had me.
Very proud of Nicky. We always knew he'd do great things in life.
I'm Pete. I'm Pete. I'm Pete, CEO of Steinlager Breweries in beautiful New Zealand. Ta-tur! Hi. My ass! What? Just get out. Go on, off. I'm just trying to get a job done. What are you doing? And we're so damn proud of Steinlager, we think it's time we exported it to everyone in America. Yeah! Now to do this, we're going to send one of our top employees over to the States. Soon young Nick here will be moving to America. Now that we're sending Nick to America, now while he's gone, an American, possibly you, will be taking over Nick's life here in New Zealand.
It goes on and on, but made me laugh so much. I mean, it's, again, the audacity of that, we're just right tone, right that, it was maybe wrong time, and wrong, we didn't master the social amplification of that one. But again, it was one of those things where a tiny little beer just could punch so above its weight. And again, there was such, it might be stupidity, it might be foolishness, but our starting point, like I think about even some of our biggest clients we have now, and we're privileged to have some spectacular clients, we kind of still have the same attitude, which is, again, not about being irresponsible and irreverent, but about, like, what do we need to do? What do we need to do that is right for that brand's DNA, only that brand's DNA? What is right in the climate we're in now? What's the context in which it's going to be consumed? And why would anyone, this is the thing that we honestly talk about in our office, why would anyone give a shit about this? Not why the client would give a shit about it, not why we will high-five ourselves because we think it's cool. Why would whoever we're aiming this at give a shit about it? And when you work back from that, more often than not, it keeps you honest. You know what I mean? And more often than not, there are things that are funny scripts or ambitious ideas or blow up the moon type of things are wrong. Because you're like, that's aiming at us, or that's aiming at making the client happy. Like we try, and again, we don't have a monopoly on all the best ideas or all the best people. You know, this is just our simple lens that we work on. But that's kind of how we start and how we think. And it's, you know, it's sort of a, it's weird. I mean, I honestly don't even know how and what we do. Just the fact that I just want to do work that makes me feel. Someone asked me yesterday, like, what does it mean to have a great idea? What do you feel when you have a great idea? And I think they're probably expecting me to say, oh my God, it's euphoric, it's amazing, light bulbs go off, and, you know, fireworks, and I just know it. And that's not what goes. You know, as soon as if I have an idea or I hear an idea that I love, the very first thing that hits me is annoyance and anger. Not angry at the idea, angry that the idea isn't out in the world already. I'm always like, that has to happen. Fuck, what are we going to do to make sure that doesn't get killed? And if it's, you know, like it turns into an immediate sense of desperation and urgency that we have to make that, we have to protect that. And I suddenly get worried. I don't, as I said, I'm not like, oh my God, that's beautiful. It's just, you know, it's a desperation because there aren't enough great ideas. There just aren't. And we're in an industry where whoever compromises the least wins. So our job is to compromise as little as possible to keep things and retain things and protect things. You know, not for the sake of creativity. I grew out of that phase many, many, many years ago. You know, when I was sort of the star striker for Saatchi's in Asia and London, you know, I was creative at all costs. Creative's going to solve everything. You know what I mean? I didn't care whether it was even strategic. It was just like, people love it because it's creative. And then suddenly I realized, actually, it's more creative when it's, as I said, when it's aimed at something and it's got a purpose. So my obsession about the creative hasn't diminished. It's just understanding the role it plays in something greater. And that for us is, you know, part of what Droga5's secret sauce is my loyalty isn't just to the creative part. My loyalty is to creative products. And I said it to a journalist the other day, every client comes into our building because of our creative, but every client hires us because of our strategy department. They all come in thinking that we're going to be a precious pack of wankers because we're creative. And I think that they're surprised that actually we're business-minded, strategic, and think about their business. And that informs what we do and what we present. And you see that with the best agencies. You see that with the best work. You see that with work that you love from other agencies. You know what I mean? There's wonderful things that are being done all over the place. Things that are, you know, that I get annoyed that I wish we'd done. But it's kind of, that's what I love about this. I'm going to play you a little.
There is a video making its way around the web right now that appears to show
graffiti artist named Mark Echo on a covert operation, jumping an airport fence and then spray painting the side of Air Force One.
Graffiti artist pulled off an internet hoax that even got the attention of the White House.
Local restaurants are chipping in to provide safe drinking water for children around the world. It's called the TAP Project.
Every dollar that they raise will give clean drinking water to a child for 40 days. If Barack Obama doesn't become the next president of the United States, I'm going to blame the Jews.
Call in the grandkids. It's time for the Great Schlep.
The Great Schlep.
The Great Schlep.
Great Schlep.
Great schlep.
This election may all come down to a one-on-one conversation with a grandson.
Get your fat Jewish asses on a plane to Florida.
The city is moving ahead with what it calls its Million Motivation Campaign, a pilot program that officials hope will push kids to get serious about their education.
Can the devices motivate them to work harder in school?
Do all your projects and your homework. You could get minutes and talk to your friends.
I'll be your dream, I'll be your wish, I'll be your fantasy. I'll be your hope, I'll be your love, be everything that you need.
Jay-Z is releasing a new book titled Decoded.
The pages of the book have been showing up all over the country. It's in all different shapes and sizes.
So if you go to bing.com/Jay-Z, it takes you on an online adventure to find the pages of Decoded. And these pages are landmarks of the rapper's life and lyrics.
Every day, 10,000 people retire. So we sent out 100 cameras across America to track one sunrise from coast to coast. Then, we visited 20 Americans on their own day ones.
It is truly the first sunrise of the next phase of your life.
This is Thunderclap, the first crowd-speaking platform that allows you to lend your voice to causes and ideas you believe in. From the first ever Thunderclap for Wall Street reform, to the United Nations joining forces with Beyoncé and harnessing Thunderclap to send 1 billion social media messages at the same time.
Anna Kendrick's not a Super Bowl spoof for Newcastle Ale.
They wanted to make a commercial about how they couldn't afford to make a commercial.
Battle apes, party sharks, friendship.
It's fun. Yeah.
I like it.
This ad is pretty hilarious.
This ad is not hilarious.
Like, what the hell's going on? And why would they even draw this up?
Suck it. Suck it.
Honey Maid, everyday wholesome snacks for every wholesome family.
It's almost overwhelming, that kind of love.
Honey Maid were unafraid to sell their products in commercials showing same-sex parents and their children.
The right-wing conservative group 1 Million Moms calling the ad a, quote, attempt to normalize sin.
The new face of Under Armour's I Will What I Want campaign, Gisele Bündchen.
We announced the unlikely partnership, and as we anticipated, everyone had something to say.
Will what you want is creating what you want, is not listening to the outside noise and just manifesting what it is that you want in your life.
I mean, the thing I'll say, my last thing I'll say. Thank you. None of that has anything in common. That's the thing I'll say about it, except good intentions and a good strategy, and that allows us to, whether you like them or not. Actually, don't give a shit whether you like it or not. It all comes from a place where we try to do the right thing for the right client. You know what I mean? And I said the other day to someone, I'm like, it takes the same amount of fucking energy to justify something mediocre as it does to try and do something great. It really does. And too many people spend too much time trying to justify average things. Whereas I'd rather try and burn my energy trying to do great things, trying to explore, trying to push for what you think is right. As I said, we don't have any smarter people than anyone else. You know what I mean? We have a lot of them, but so do a lot of other places. We don't have the best clients. We have some fucking great ones. But there are great clients out there, there are great creatives out there. Some are held hostage in bad places. But every big agency isn't crap. Every small agency isn't great. It just comes from what you know, when you stare, we all stare at the same blank page or blank screen. And just try not, we try not to bullshit ourselves. That's all. Maybe we do, but we try not to. And it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. When I started the agency, I wasn't trying to reinvent the advertising industry. I was trying to reinvent my advertising industry. And I want to do stuff that I believe in and that I'm proud of. And it's not for my peers. It's nice when my peers like it, but it's not for my peers. Anyway, thank you for letting me ramble. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.